Ahoj, nacházíme se na place, kde teďko týden probíhalo nahrávání alba Jono Heyes. Jono právě poslouchá náběry tamhle. Sjelo se tady spousta špičkových muzikantů z celé Evropy, nejen z celé Evropy. A pod palcem zvukově to má matador hudebního průmyslu Jerry Boyce, držitel několika Grammy a člověk, který pracoval se spoustou velkých jmen hudební historie. Položím mu pár otázek. Vít Maršálek.
I wanted to be a lighting technician in television. That's what I was quite interested in sound because I had friends in bands and I had a tape recorder at home when I was young. But really I wanted, and it's a long story. I'll try and tell you a very short version. Is the BBC in England, the television company, used to have a big training school, and they would train people in all aspects of technical things. You know, sound, lighting, scenery making, set design, all that sort of thing. And I applied to train as a lighting person, but they came back and said, you're not old enough and you haven't got the right exams. But you can train as a sound man you have got the right exams for that. So I then thought, okay, and sometimes you can change, you know, from doing the sound course to the lighting course. So I thought, oh, that's easy then, I'll go as a sound man and change to the lighting course. So I applied for the sound course, and I was 17 at the time, and they came back and said, oh yeah, but you still have to be 18, go and get some relevant experience. So I thought, what does that mean? I thought, well, probably work in a recording studio. So in 1965 in London, there were probably 5 or 6 proper studios then, and mostly owned by big record companies. And so I wrote off to the ones I could find anything about, including Abbey Road. 4 of them or 3 of them came back and said, we don't have any jobs and we're not likely to. 2 didn't answer, and 1, which was Abbey Road, came out and said, well, we don't have any jobs at the moment, but we'll give you an interview. So I go through the interview process, thought they was never going to offer me a job. They did chase me up and say, would I fill in the form they'd given me if I wanted the job, even though they didn't have any, or let them know. So I decided I'd fill it in anyhow, nothing to lose. And I got offered a job there. So I started off at Abbey Road anyhow, working in the tape library, filing tapes. First day was fantastic because the very first tape I was given to put into the filing system was a Beatles tape. They were recording Help at the time. So I thought, oh, this is quite exciting. But soon you get to realise that a reel of tape is a reel of tape, and you don't hear the music or involved in the process of making it. And it gets very tedious. I got very bored, and after about 3 months I was going to leave. And just in time, the position came up to be a tape op, as they were called. Or you know, assistant, so or trainee assistant. So I got promoted to that, and basically in the end I just thought, actually this is really good fun, getting paid listening to music all day long. And at Abbey Road you listen to everything from Yehudi Menuhin to the Beatles to military bands, you know, all sorts of things, very, very varied. So that's how it started, and I've loved it ever since. I'm still here. I was still an assistant when I worked at the Rolling Stones, and that wasn't at Abbey Road. That was at the next studio I worked at, called Olympic Studios, where Rolling Stones did most of their recordings. I can't remember which album it was. The things I remember most is that I was there when they recorded the beginning of Honky Tonk, you know, the basic track of Honky Tonk Woman. And I remember they were doing it was 1968, so whatever album they made that came out towards the end of 1968. And I remember Ry Cooder was sort of guesting. And I do remember one particular thing is Mick Jagger wanted to do a voice on something. Everyone else had gone home, and he liked to do his vocals with a handheld microphone, you know, which is, as we know in studios, is very unusual, and it's actually quite difficult to record if they don't know what they're doing, and with a speaker playback, which is even more unusual, not headphones. But he did a vocal, and it was basically one take, and he did a whole performance, all the dancing around and everything. You know, he gives him the vibe. He wasn't doing it for our benefit, but it's fantastic to see sort of get a personal show. You know, it's a great moment. And the R.E.M. record was Fables of the Reconstruction, I think it's called. And it was their second album, and it was just before they became really famous. And they were still trying to decide as a band, I think, whether they wanted to stick to their more ethnic-y sort of roots or be a little bit more pop mainstream. And I think after that record they decided the second way, and they became really famous, you know. But they were a good band even then. There's some good songs on that record. But that was done in London at the studio I was working at the time called Livingston. Well, we're not making a record where we want complete separation. We want a very live feel, so that pickup down the microphones is actually, if you're careful, is beneficial. You do have to make sure there's enough separation, as we call it, to be able to have some control in the mixing, you know, to make things a bit quieter, a bit louder. But as you know, I've been running with two ambient mics up in the ceiling, and they will be quite a big part of the sound. So obviously everything is on them, hopefully. But I just find, and some of the condensers, like like this one here, which is a Neumann 184, they're pretty directional. But the big condensers obviously are less directional. But it's different. If you're doing live stuff, if you're doing, different circumstances, maybe, live sound, then I think you need more control, and an actual finesse of sound quality isn't quite so important. And there's some really good moving coils that are not quite as good as condensers, but they're not far off it. Well, he contacted me with his previous record about mastering it. And I don't have a mastering room, but I can do all the preparation and sound improvement, and probably I'll spend more time and go into much greater detail than mastering engineers generally would. And so he sent me his record, which I thought sounded really good, but it just needed a bit of smartening up, making it up sound like a real finished record. And I think that's how we started it. Is that right, Jono? You're not listening. On the little bit of free time I get, I go for a walk outside, because we're in the middle of woods, and we're also near the small village of Frantoli. Sorry, I get it right this time. And I've walked up there, just been this morning, actually up as far as the church, but I didn't have time to go in. But it's just interesting to see and compare how where I live in England, where I also live in a small village, and it's quite different. But other than that, we usually in the evening spend a bit of time downstairs when we're eating, and there's a bar down there, and I have a couple of beers, and we chat and be silly, Well, I was, before we went, I'd been to the studio in Havana a year before we did that record, so I've been there before, and it's a big studio. I mean, it's 4 times the size of this, with a much higher ceiling, and it's all very wooden surfaces, so it's got a nice sort of warm ambience to it without being really silly too live to be usable. And we were recording this record, mostly with older musicians who'd been around in the 1940s and 50s. And at that time, in the late 90s, middle 90s, Cuba hadn't been influenced much musically by sort of rock and roll and the Beatles era and that sort of thing. I mean, a bit, but so the older people still played pretty much in the style they used to play in, which is what we wanted. And there were a few younger musicians who also could play into that sort of style as well. And I was told that Ry Cooder, who was one of the producers, together with Nick Gold and Juan DeMarcos, the Cuban guy, he was going to sit and play out in the studio in the middle of all the musicians. And he said, basically, I want to hear what I'm hearing out here. I want to hear the room. So we played around with different microphones, and in the end, I brought a pair of big Neumann condensers called TLM 170s and put them on Omni. They're TLM 170s, they're big condensers, they're Omnis. Well, they can be anything, but they will go to work on Omni, and I had them as what you call a spaced Omnis, so very far apart sort of breaks all the rules in the days of vinyl because of phase cancellation, particularly in low frequencies and that sort of issue. But you know, we were very careful, and it was never a problem, and it just captured the sound of this room. You know, a bit of experimentation. No, I know. I mean, obviously I know a little bit about music because I've learnt it as I go on, and I can play 3 notes on the piano. I can find you G and C and A, and I can work out the other ones, but I can't play anything. But I've got, you know, you learn, and I've got quite good ears for hearing bad harmonies. But what I can't say to people is change that note to this note. I just say to them, no, that doesn't feel nice. Can you change it, you know, to something a bit? And sometimes they say, no, that's what we want. Fair enough. And sometimes they will change it, you know. Purely from a sound perspective, like this record, you could have done on analog because we're mainly whole takes, and if we are, we're editing between different takes. And a good analog, you know, if you carefully line up the tape machine with the best sort of modern tape, still to me sounds a bit better. It's a bit warmer somehow. And it's probably a less good representation of the actual sound, but it does something nice to it. However, as you would know, in the digital world, I'm using Pro Tools, but there are other systems that people use. The amount of going in and moving things slightly, or just minor corrections that just make it all work much better, it's just, which you can't do in analog, you know. You can get into a lot more detail. So I'm now at the point where actually, if I work on analog, I find it hard because I'm used to being able to do all the things I can do in Pro Tools, so which I can't. And what a lot of people will do is they'll record the basic track with perhaps, you know, if it's a rock band or something similar like that, with the drums, everything onto analog. And then when they've got a good take, they'll put it into digits, into Pro Tools, and work on it there. So they sort of get the best of both worlds. But you could say you're also getting the worst of both worlds, if you see what I mean. Yeah. You know, because nothing is perfect. But yeah, given a choice, I would, you know, if it was the right sort of record, if it was very live, I would probably, but it's expensive analog. I mean, a reel of tape, which only lasts for, maximum of 30 minutes, is something like, I don't know, 400 euros these days, 300 euros. It's expensive and heavy, and tape machines weigh a ton. You know, it's like moving a piano. Whereas Pro Tools is a computer, I mean, even a laptop sometimes, and a bit of software, you know, and a screen basically. So it's much easier to move around.